welcome to day 23. My name is Joe Solari. I help authors build great businesses, and today we're going to talk about how the publishing market really works. Here's what we're going to do. I'm going to tell you why you should listen to me, go into how the market works, and this whole idea of cumulative advantage. So, who am I? I work with authors. I work with authors that are doing 6 and 7 figures. In that process of working with them, initially on their back office and helping them to understand how to run a business, I've come to get exposed to what they have to do to sell books. And in that process, I observed that a lot of different authors were doing really successful stuff that conflicted with each other. And how could that be? Because isn't there just one way to rule them all? Well, there sort of is. And in understanding that process, is that me? Oh, okay. Thought it was me feedbacking or something. Anyhow, you know who I am. Cool. So, God, that's horrible. So yeah, let's talk about how the market works. And we're going to dive into this. We're going to go through these almost like physics that are in the market for publishing, and then how we can start to use them. Now, who here took like Econ 101 in high school or college? Supply and demand curve, you heard all about that stuff? It's bullshit. It doesn't work in this market. Okay? If it was a matter of supply and demand, you all would be broke. Everybody would, because there's an endless supply of content, and there is a very finite amount of attention, and you'd all be begging for it. So we're in a completely different market. The kind of market we're in is called a power curve market or a popularity market. There's a lot of different names for it. But what you feel in it is that you see a lot of people, that have trouble with success, and then a small amount of people that make a bunch of money. Now, anybody may have heard of an article by a guy named Chris Anderson called The Long Tail. It was written, like almost 10 years ago. And it talked about how Amazon was making a bunch of money off of the long tail. So they were being competitive in the books that would show up in the marketplace that would be at like Barnes & Noble and in these big box stores. And they were underpricing on those, but then they were selling all these books that were niche books at full price, and they were crushing everybody. And then what we found out as authors is that you could live a pretty nice life in the long tail, right? There's these niches that you could go into, and if you didn't have a bunch of middlemen in, you could find a nice living selling into those niches. And in fact, some of you guys have created niches that didn't exist and can now make a living in that. But the other thing is that they're still the front end of that thing. And we can see this in how the Amazon rank works, in that you need to have at least a book a day selling to get a rank of 100,000, right? And then you have all this money that's being made up in that upper end. And it gets exponential in how it grows. So this can be a little disheartening, right? But it also can be a powerful force we can use. Now, it's in the entire market. It's also in every single genre I've ever looked at. So this is stuff I got from Alex Newton over K-Lytics. It's about a year old, looking at specifically a genre-based ranking. And we see the same thing, right? We see this grouping of this people at the front end of this, the head of this market, are making most of the money. And any market I've looked at has had this same kind of shape, right? Now, when I was doing this research, I found this study called the Artificial Market Study. And what they did in this study is they took 48 songs and 14,000 people. And they had them rate the songs. And in one control group, they just showed them the songs randomly and they rated them. And that became the control. And then they would break up these smaller groups and they would give them different levels of social influence. So sometimes they would still have them randomized, but they would show them how many downloads there were done, or they would show them ranking. They would then go another level, and they would do what you see over here, which is ranked order, which is identical to what Amazon does, right? And what ends up happening is you get an inequality of results and an uncertainty of outcomes. And what does that mean? It means when you look at these bars up here, there's a measurement called a Gini coefficient. And it's a way that they use in economics to measure the difference inside a country between the top earners and the bottom earners. So a country like Nairobi, which would have like a Gini of 60, France would have like 34. So the disparity between outcomes in the economy. Well, they can apply that same thing to how this model went. And what they showed is when they introduced the social portion, that uncertainty increased by 50%. And because they did this over and over again, it wasn't just uncertainty between market and market, but that same song that might be the best song wouldn't be the best song over and over again. That's the market you're in, all right? The other thing that I want to talk about coming off of that idea, and we're going to pull all of this together in the end, is the idea of how your audience consumes your books. You hear all kinds of woo-shoo about cliffs and algorithms, and it's all bullshit. This is what's happening, is your existing audience today comes in and consumes your book, okay? And when they're done, they leave. They go read something else. So the audience you're building now, and you capture in this particular round of play, and I think about a book launch like a round of play, the people that we retain out of that are going to be the ones that influence the next launch. If you try and break that back of that demand curve with advertising, you will go broke. You can change it a little bit, but you're not going to change it much because it's fighting massive forces. The biggest force that you can wield is your audience. That's them doing what they do. That's their behavior. You can influence it and use it to your benefit, but you're not going to change it, right? Problem is, those people aren't just your audience. They're other people's audiences, right? They're moving from book to book. They're moving from genre to genre. And at the same time, you have more and more books coming out every day. So I'm going to show you a model of how this all comes together. But these are the forces we're playing with. Now, if your business feels like it's a roller coaster, it's because it is, right? We have this mythology that gets told at places like this that it should be up and to the right and your business is just going to grow. Well, it can be up and to the right, but there's going to be ups and downs. And it's got to be that way because your production is cyclical, right? Your creativity is cyclical. Genres are cyclical. And when you adopt this and you embrace it and you start to see, okay, I can drive into the market higher, but there's going to be a point where rank gravity kicks in, right? And what I need to really understand in my business over time is, does this bottom plateau keep going up a little bit and a little bit? We get suckered into this idea of how high it can go on the peak. And that's great and it feels good, but if it crashes down after that and goes below and you're not building audience, your business won't be sustainable. Now I'm going to show you some graphs. These are authors where I've done analysis on their entirety of their backlist. And you can see in this particular case, this author had been writing since 2015, and all these lines are different books and different series. And what I want to demonstrate with this graph is you can see how over time these peaks are building up, right? But they all drop. And some of the stuff, like back here, like those later readers that are now driving this person into $20,000 launches, they're coming back here and they're maybe adding a little bit to that tail. But those old books never come back up like the new ones because that's part of your growth, right? Finding your voice, finding that right series. But to get those launches, those books had to be written, okay? Don't ever forget that. This is just another example. You know, this is a person in contemporary romance that when they launch a book, it goes to $60,000, $70,000 in the first month. But you can look out here in 2016. Almost didn't make the graph, right? Those are the kind of things that we want to see in your business. And I'm trying to help you guys start to look at these things rather than look at things that may be deceiving to you. So what's this all about? This concept of what you do in this current round with the assets that you have today, doing the best you possibly can to capture and conserve resources for the next round. And those resources are fans and funds. And they have this really cool intersection and connection because fans are the source of funds, and funds can help you find more fans, and you can get that little or positive feedback loop to keep working in your business. So we're going to take some time to kind of dissect this idea of cumulative advantage and how you can build this over time and give you some tools to use that you probably already have. You just don't know how to use them the right way. A big part of this model came out of when I was doing my research. I found this article about power law curves in the Japanese book market. And there was this little graph in it. And I wrote to the professor, I'm like, can I use this in my presentation? He's like, absolutely. You're like one of 5 people that read this thing. But the idea is that the market is a complex self-organizing system, like an avalanche, right? So it's these little sand pebbles that build up to make this massive force. And that really resonated with me, but I didn't like his drawing. Not that mine's much better, but this is the concept to get your head around. There's really 3 levels in the marketplace. At the neuroscopic level, this is your reader connecting with your story world and your characters, and an intimate connection that's happening in their brain at a neurological level. And as far as the difference between your character and a real human being, there is none. And I'm going to talk about that in a minute. Once you get them to start associating their identity to the characters and story worlds, then what we want to do is we want to move them to this mesoscopic level. We want to bring them to a place where we can say to them, hey, there's other people just like you. There's other people on this team that you can hang out with and you can be nerdy with about these characters. Now, there's a social function you're delivering with this, which is really awesome for the people to be able to give them that. But there's also a secret evil plan for our marketing. And this is how this plan works, is now that you have a really clean, pure signal of your ideal audience, you can send that into platforms like Amazon. And if you don't do things like stack promotions and do a bunch of things that cloud that signal up, and I know other people are going to tell you to do that, but Amazon doesn't give a shit about traffic. They have too much, they don't want it. They want conversions. And when you give them conversion, they can see that, and when you give them a really clean audience that they can apply their filters to and their machine learning, they can then send you more people like that. And now the loop closes, because when those people come in, they're going to read your book, and now we're going to just keep doing this. And that's the compounding advantage. That's cumulative advantage in its essence. So let me talk a little bit about another project that somebody did. That little scabby bunny was found at a garage sale. And there's a project called Significant Objects. And they took stuff that they got at garage sales and flea markets and had people write fiction stories. Not even a blurb, but a fiction story. And put that with the eBay sale. That was all that they had, and that was just that fiction story. And you see a little excerpt of it here. And they were able to sell that bunny for $24. That's the power of story, okay? And a lot of times when you're saying, why won't people read my emails? It's because you write your emails like a crappy digital marketer, not like a storyteller. And when you change that, now all of a sudden, you're earning attention in every single email. I mentioned about how your characters and people are real. This is a study done by Dr. Anderson, I believe it is, and she's a neuroscientist. And they went and asked people a series of questions while they're in a functional MRI machine and mapped out the areas of where your semantics and your associations are stored, and asked them questions about real people, fictional people, real situations, fictional situations. And the wind-up is, while we can tell the difference, inside our brain there is no difference. So your characters physically manifest as chemistry and electricity in other human beings' brains, burning in pathways, right? So when you start thinking about these powerful tools you have, you understand how you can Put that Trojan horse right into your books. The next part of this thing is understanding of that community piece. You don't want a large net community. You don't want to have what are called weak links. You want to have a tight community that's supporting each other around these behavior changes and about supporting the ideas of your books. So that's the other purpose of having the community. And in this study, what they talked about is that they were able to map out different product sales through a network, a sales network. And they did, I think, CDs and music. It's a bit older one. But the windup is, with all the fancy graphs, is that the smaller groups were the better ones at disseminating and getting a purchase to happen. Larger groups tend to get the information out, but don't get action. Well, the reason for that is what you need to have happen is a complex contagion. Like, if I say the room temperature here is 78 degrees, then like you have that information, and that's that. Getting me to stop smoking, that's a behavior change. And if you have peer support and you have focus on how we can make that behavior change together, then you can make those behavior changes. Very different things. So what we need to do is build a system using these forces that are inside the marketplace to do this, right? So we're bringing in a person, right? We're dropping the inception in the book, getting them to buy into the connection, not with you, not with your brand, but with the characters in the story world, the feels, right? You all are getting emails about people talking about these characters like they're real people, right? Like, that's weird, right? But that's your product working. It's doing its magic. But, like, they're not real. Taking that person through a process, whether it's in a Facebook group or your email or however you feel most comfortable, indoctrinating them and understanding what it means to have this character as part of your identity and how you can be part of a bigger social group, you start meeting things that people need to like actually have good mental health, right? They're having a social function, they're having status within your group, they're feeling that they're part of something. And then you have a way to control this through the celebration of this launch is because your community celebrates this stuff. This is a big deal for them. How excited do you get when you're, if you're into Doctor Who and the new season starts, or you're into Walking Dead, like you're chomping at the bit, right? When you start using that as a celebration for them to get what they want, they're going to go and act. Their behavior is going to go in and drive into the market. And what's going to happen is round after round, this is going to build on itself and compound. Because what happens is, and we've seen this, when we get a system up like this, we start triggering Amazon's latent marketing. And we can see 18 days after we do a launch, a kick up in sales. And we don't have hard evidence on this, but anecdotally what we're thinking is going on is it takes them a few days to do a moving average on this, and then scheduling it into the inventory of emails that go out. But we kick in and we get the best marketing system in the world working for us by doing this. It's a lot of work because you have to build this stuff individual by individual, and you have to have a community. But once the wheels start spinning, it self-perpetuates. So I talked about this, about you want to build a wide bridge network. You want to help these people connect to each other, even if that's virtually, right? There's been lots of studies done about how people can be influenced by avatars and influenced by their friends online. They've done studies where they've made up people in weight loss groups and provided them motivation from this bot, and it's helped them to lose weight. They get like 20% better results. Thinking about how you can make your community self-support and celebrate what's happening in your books and your brand is how you make this stuff work. And then you start to see how this model plays in on itself, right? Is over time, in these downturns, what's really happening is the real magic, and that is your audience connecting and building stronger and making those connections, right? It's those orange lines that's going to make you money. So here's another thing that we found really interesting is I don't think many people have really thought about building a company that is aligned with those forces, right? You hear a bunch of things at conferences about different things that work, different hacks, different tactics, and you stitch them together like a Frankenstein monster and hope it sells books. But now that you understand these forces, you can start to think about how you can put all these pieces together, right? And you can understand that you're in this winner-take-all market, and you're not going to win on the first round. It's like Monopoly. You got to be collecting resources round after round to get to that point where you can take people out. But the difference about the folks here in this room right now is you understand that when you play Monopoly, you don't go chasing after Boardwalk and all those high-end ones. You go after the places where people land the most. You go after the orange properties because that's where most people land in the game, and they're easier to develop. So when you start focusing less on what's happening on the platform and how you're presenting and advertising, and more on how you're actually presenting inside your community to your existing fans, they will start doing all this work for you. I like to kind of go through some of these things so you understand the differences in how stuff pulls together. This is kind of the stuff you hear a lot, right? Bigger is better. It's all about visibility. Pay to play now. Gonna have to pay. I don't believe that. I think better is better. I know from seeing what's happened to brands that really focus on this is that 18 months out, the magic happens. But it wasn't like it just happened then. This stuff has been building for months. It's really about attention and retention. You have to win people's attention. You have to understand this battle is in the microseconds, right? You have to earn them to read the first sentence. Then you have to earn them to scroll past the fold on a page. And then over time, you have to get them to make a decision that their most precious resource is worth spending on you. And guess what? It's not money. What's that? Time. It's their reading time. It's not even just time. It's their reading time. How many of you would rather read a book you know how it ends than test out a new book? No more questions, Your Honor. That's what's going on with the reader. This is something where they get respite from their daily life. This is not a hobby, but it's a pastime for them. They enjoy this time to go into your world, and they want to make sure that the little bit that they get is going to be used well. So if we can think about how our marketing is doing that, for every bit of attention, you give them that reward of something good. It could be micro stories. It could be how you write your emails. But when they start to build that trust, they're going to do things like actually read your stuff, right? Now, not everybody that reads your book or your reader magnet is going to say, I want to read this person. They may say, I hate this. I don't like this. That's okay. Now they're off the list. We don't need to worry about them. We've all made our decisions. This relationship's over. But for those that do, now you've jumped this hump. You've gone from that being a barrier to entry to a barrier to exit. Now they're thinking of you and the idea of like, well, I'd rather read one of her stories than go find a new author, right? That's where we want to get people to. There's a cautionary tale. The largest pharmaceutical company selling on Amazon, gigantic fulfillment operation. Everyone was talking a few months ago what a big deal these guys were, and they were going to go public, blah, blah, blah. They're out of business because all they were focused on was scale. And a few hiccups, and the thing fell on itself. Don't look for the short term on this. This is a long-term game. If you think this game is about you writing 1 or 2 books and becoming a millionaire, you're in the wrong industry. But it is an industry where you can be here a long, long time making money. Here's another thing I found interesting that I wanted to touch on in this. I told you about that artificial market study, which is a really interesting study to read. The guys then said, what if we flipped that? What if we took the worst book and told people it was the best book and did the opposite? And in these slides, what you can see is where they did these inversions. So like the dark solid line, that would be song 1. Then you can see down those lower ones, when they did the dotted line, that's when they would invert them. And then the opposite is the song 48, right? So you can see that it could become a self-fulfilling prophecy. So if you go and you do a bunch of scammy tactical stuff, you can take a crappy book and get it higher ranking. The interesting thing about this study is what they found out was there's two functions. Eventually, the really good books will push through and they will be found. You can't stop that from happening. But there's a really, really horrible thing that happens when this stuff goes on that's a tragedy to all of us. The marketplace loses faith in the social proof. And the downloads for everyone dropped. So when they did these comparisons, they saw significant loss in sales. So one of the things I wanted to put this in to bring this up is I know there's been a lot of trouble in the marketplace. We think it's COVID, we think it's that. I also think this is playing out. Amazon is suffering from brand risk management in a severe way right now. There's lots of fraudulent stuff going on, and they're spending a lot of resources trying to fix that stuff. And we're all suffering because customers over time will lose faith in the recommendations that are being made there. So keep that in mind. So I know we got to wrap this up here. What I would like you guys to do is, if you're going to take one thing away from this, is how would you change your business and how you do your marketing, knowing now what you know, and understanding that 85% of the people that you bring into your system, that you pay if you're doing paid traffic or however you get your leads, 85% of those people that bought in the next 2 years did so after the first 90 days. So if you're running a kind of a traditional digital marketing strategy, you're doing really well, understand that that's 15% of your potential audience, that there's this other 85% that you may not be nurturing the way you should. What if those people take 18 months to buy from you, right? And you give them a system that allows them to do that over time. What would that do to your business? So I'm going to shoot forward here real quickly because I think that this one is probably the answer to this question. Inside this whole deal is this loop, right? If you have a brand promise, could your fans articulate that brand promise to another fan? If they were sitting down over a glass of wine, could your fan say to her friend, this is why you should read this person's book? Because they're risking their social capital, right? This is getting back into those orange lines on those earlier maps. How are those people are saying, I care for this author so much that I'm going to risk my reputation with my friend to tell them about this book because I want them to have the joy that I had when I read it. Do you deliver on that? Like, first off, can they articulate it? Probably not, because you probably can't. So we got to get that figured out, right? If you can your fan message that? When the person picks up that book, whatever book it is, whatever first contact they have with you, does it deliver on that message? Those are all questions that have to be answered and have to be automated into your whole brand so that that process happens, right? So that, because I've got a cousin that when she suggests a TV show or a movie, it validates how crappy it is. I know I'm not going to watch it. It's like, and then there's other people that when they say you should watch this, I put a note in my phone, or I go right onto Amazon and I buy that thing, right? That's the world we live in. And when you get people that are doing that kind of work for you, it's free, and they're doing it from the love of what they get out of it. It's their identity, right? They're connected with this thing. This is the stuff that I would love to see you guys come back in a year and say that you've implemented this and have changed your businesses in ways that not only couldn't be done with what you're doing today, but cost nearly nothing. So with that, I will open up to questions. How much time do we have? Oh, we got 15 minutes. We can save the world. They want you to go up to the mic, so.
I can speak with a loud voice. So, online. So I just had one comment about
There's people online who wouldn't be able to hear you. Yeah. There's rules, man. We got to follow them.
This was actually more of a comment and less a question. So your last point about
recommendations. So I used to recommend Patrick Rothfuss to everybody, right? Because his first 2 books were great.
Yeah?
But since he's never going to finish his 3rd book, as far as we can tell, no longer recommend him to people, right? So we had that capital. He got lots of recommendations. I teach classes with hundreds of students. They got recommendations. No more, right?
Right, he blew
dropped
it.
the ball.
He blew it. Now, are there other, George R. R. Martin, right? Like, well, he's in a position he doesn't care, right? Like, he's got HBO stroking him checks, so like, I'll get to my book, never, thank you. Yell through my bag of money. Thanks.
Your presentation focused a lot on Amazon. What if you are wide or doing direct sales? How does the model change?
It doesn't change at all. In fact, it gets better because as a wide and specifically direct person, you have a massive amount of control of what that experience is. In fact, I think that's the single number one reason why you want to go direct, because what would you create as far as a landing page experience for your first book to get me to buy it? Would it look anything like an Amazon page?
Nope.
No more questions, Your Honor. Like, that's the point, is like you have so much control. And think about websites where you've gone to and you've been intrigued by like just how they're laid out and the information they have. And it's like they're putting those hooks in. That is the experience you can deliver, and that brand promise coming across everything. So yeah, I would say you just have to understand what those audiences are, and the extra work is you need to be segmenting more, right? You need to show Kobo love at Kobo, direct love at, and you can, and here's the other thing is you can tell people, like, the people I love the most are direct people, okay? So come get that love. You could, I don't mind if you buy it in KU, but you're gonna get the book a year and a half later. It's not gonna, you're not gonna get treated the way that I treat my direct love. Thanks.
Thank you.
So is there a, oh gosh, how do I want to phrase it? Is there a space then for advertisements in your, in getting and keeping
Yes,
readers?
yeah,
Because
absolutely.
Because I think when you said, that was kind of shocking that 85% is 90 days after first contact, because it always seems to be stack everything in the first 2 weeks and don't hit the plateau.
Yeah.
So I'm assuming it would be.
Yeah, so you have to think about how you're doing things different. So like, even if you're advertising, like, you need to have some kind of way of finding new customers. What changes, and that may be the same strategy that you have, right? It could be lead generation on Facebook, whatever you're thinking about doing. It's just having more so the back end, what happens to somebody that doesn't go and buy a book, right? So first off, like, not sending somebody to Amazon in the first thing, if you think about the difference in this model, right? By sending Amazon off of an ad, sending them, oh, you like my ad, click, go buy my book, and they go and bounce on Amazon. They just go there and go, I didn't want to go to Amazon, and they bounce. That's driving down your conversion rate. You're actually hurting yourself long run, versus bringing them to your site, coaching them up, nurturing them, and then telling them, hey, it's time to go buy the book, and then you send a concentration of buyers to that platform and triggering what they want, what they're looking for as far as positive feedback. So I would say that you need to think about how you are going to use your advertising. And for me, having some hard guardrails as to like the percentage of your business helps you to always question when your ads are really working. Because here's the thing that I found looking at hundreds of authors' businesses, you guys give these ads way too much credit. It's your audience and you that's driving this stuff. And it just happens to be that you're running ads at the same time. And when you start to test that, it's like, yes, you get some boost out of ads, but it's not what you think it is. So hopefully that answered the question. I could keep going, so good.
So regarding like building your community, the wide bridge, people interacting with each other, I guess that probably a lot of authors maybe only have a mailing list. They don't have a social platform like a large Facebook group, Discord. Do you think it's possible to foster that community using just like a mailing list and a website, or do you need those other social platforms?
I think it's harder. I shouldn't say. There's some social functions you're never going to get, right? Because you're going to have this unconscious feeling that you're part of a community. You can do that in the languaging you do in your emails. like talking about people, how they're part of this community, and you can mention what other fans are doing in that, but you kind of become this, center to making that all happen. There are some things that are just better done on things like Facebook or Discord. It's extra work, I know. It's a lot of work. But one of the things that helped me discover this was Chris Kennedy, who's unfortunately not at the conference this year. He was crushing it and was running no ads at all. And he was going to all these conferences. But he was going to cons and he was building an audience. And there's people that were showing up in those cons spending $500, $600 dressing up as his characters in his books. It's like, you think he has a hard time selling books? No. Like, and he told me, he gave his fans the fan club. They went off and incorporated it and did it himself. And I was like, that's crazy. Why would you do that with your intellectual property? He's like, because I trust them. And they know what they want. And I don't have the time. Okay? And it's like, all right, I'll shut up. You're right. Like, it all works, right? Will there always be some bad actor? Yeah, but you just take him out back and shoot him. Make him an example for the rest of the community, right?
I think I like you a whole lot, Joe. By the way, hi, Joe. I'm Lydia.
Nice to meet you, Lydia. We're supposed to talk at some point,
Yeah,
right?
I know. We are supposed to talk at some point. And I'm very pleased to get to meet you finally. I've been reading your emails for, I don't know, a year and a half now. But I was very, very shocked, as someone else mentioned, about that 85% after 90 days thing. And my question is specific to culling email lists. I have a very large email list compared to most people, I guess, and I have a certain percentage that the email list says are cold subscribers. And I've heard different theories on what to do with that. Some people are like, oh, cut them. If they haven't interacted in 90 days, just cut them off. They're not worth your time. They're costing you money every month. And other people have said, oh, but not all devices record properly when someone opens or clicks or looks or whatever, and you're potentially cutting off, valued readers when you call your list. And I don't know if there's somewhere in between. Like, I'm not really sure. I'm very, very hesitant to cut people.
Yeah.
Because I paid good money for those emails.
Amen, amen.
So,
I 100% agree. I know, some of the work that you guys have done, and yeah, you spent a lot of money to get those customers. And what if they're not going to buy for 5 years?
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of what I think. Like, well, what if?
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to cut them off. Do you have a solution or a workaround?
Yeah,
that you
so
suggest?
Watching the time, I'll give you some ideas on this because this is a real issue. So when I do a deep dive on a incoming business, one of the things we do is we do a survey of the mailing list. And most of the time, 10% of the people have never read any of your books. And about 50% of that list is read some of your stuff, but not all of it. So right there on that list, there's this massive opportunity to make money. And we just have to think about how we do that. And there's two things to think about this to answer the question for you, Lydia. First is like, now you have that information, what campaigns would you run and how would you do that to actually get the people that didn't read Series 2 to read Series 2? But then the other thing is, how do you build systems to get people to not end up on those lists ever again, right? And that's what I call
on the cold list? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, so like when I look at how you structure email sequences, so when you have somebody and they come in off of like a reader magnet, we have one objective, get them to read the reader magnet. That's it. We're not going to tell them about our parakeet. We're not going to tell them about how much fun we have in the snow. What are other series? We're not going to sell them. Because if your book is good enough to sell everything, we just need them to do that. So if they don't do that, well, then you just need to say, listen, you're not going to move any further into my cool, awesome process where I'm going to do all these awesome things and give you these free things until you finish the book. That becomes a filter for you, right? Now you can go back into that list that's building and building and building and see what you can do there. But we've done work on this and seen it's never on our time frame. Readers take 6 to 8 weeks to get through some of these sequences. And a great one to ask is in that first email is like, I know you just downloaded my magnet. What are you reading right now? You get intel in the market, what's going on, and you're like, holy shit, that's a long book. They're not going to be done with that for a while, right? Like, we forget that, oh, they have a life and they may have other things in their reading pile. How can we get my stuff to move up? And, you know, to kind of some of your other stuff, you're reading my emails. I fundamentally changed my email sequence. And when I did that, a lot of people didn't opt in for the next bit. I never kicked them off my list. I still reach out to them occasionally. But the people that have stayed around, the engagement is massive, right? And I don't have to wonder if people are getting my emails, because when they don't get them, they write me, right? And they tell other people to sign up for my email list. So like that kind of stuff is that power we get when we deliver on brand. And that was a big change for me, because I was like everybody else out there, like, hey, I got a course, you want to buy this, you want to do that?
Answer Kathy's question. I know Kathy, she's awesome. So I'll chat with you more.
Yeah, yeah.
Hi. As a new author, it caught my attention right away when you talked about paid newsletters, because, you know, I let my stuff out into the world, my magnet. I'm at about 2,000 subscribers. And so then I did a paid, like a series of 4 stacked paid newsletters, and 10,000 people downloaded it free. And then I did, that was in July, and I did it with my next book in October, and about 6,000 did with only 2 newsletters. But I guess what I think I heard you say is that's damaging the logarithms or something. That's not.
Yeah,
really
so let me really clarify that for you so you understand. I love the idea of building newsletters with things like book sweeps and book funnel and doing newsletter swaps and all that kind of stuff, and even paid things where you get that in. What I get concerned about is when you're starting to market your books and you send a signal to Amazon. If you're trying to build your business on any sales platform, but I'll use Amazon since it's the biggest, when you send them, let's say you've got 100 people that are going to buy that book, and you got 200 people on that list, and those 100 people 200 people show up and 100 people buy that, you've got a 50% conversion rate. If you throw on top of that at that launch period all kinds of stuff with free Booksy and all these other things, hoping to stack it to get rank, you're driving down your conversion rate. And you look like every other schmuck trying to sell a book that day. And Amazon's machine is going to say, oh, it's a 1.2% conversion rate. Seen that before. When they see a 20% conversion rate, they're like, what's going on here? Right? And then they can look at that, even though it's a tiny audience, they can look at that audience and say, oh, we know other people like this. Way more people than you know. We're going to send them an email. And when that email goes out and they see that conversion rate staying above their average, they send it out to more people until it goes below average, and they kick you to the curb and they go to the next one. Here's the dirty secret of this whole thing. When you guys start doing this, you're going to make it harder and harder on yourself, because you're going to start raising the average conversion rate for books. Because every time people in this room start doing that, it lifts the average. That's how averages work. And it's going to make it harder and harder for people to trigger latent marketing. So I know I threw a lot at you there, but did that answer your question?
Well, you're just saying, don't do it.
Yeah, that didn't sound as cool, did it? I think when you use list building stuff, use it for list building, not for driving sales. Don't do it.
Thank you.
I got 1:20. All right. Thank you very much. One last thing. If you don't know, you can go to my website, joesolari.com. There's a place to sign up for free sessions. Bad news is you're not going to get a session until probably February or March at this point. But they're there. They're around all year. I do this. It's not just with the show. They're always open. On Thursdays, I have office hours. You can sign up. It does not cost you anything. I will not sell you anything. I'm just going to try and help you figure out how to make your business work better. Thanks a lot.